Hellboy, the half-demon, half-human hero who was dropped on Earth from Hell, has had a rather complicated family dynamic. Of course, he's the son of a witch and a fallen demon, but his ancestry dates back to King Arthur. Yes, the same King Arthur, wielder of Excalibur and all that. However, Hellboy also has an adoptive family and Elizabeth Sherman, who's his girlfriend. But then, Hellboy also has this long extended family from Hell. In this video, we will explore Hellboy's 10 closest family members. So without further ado, let's begin. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Azazel, the father. Azazel was once a deity who was venerated in ancient Babylon, but later he found himself the object of worship among witches in various English cities and towns, including but not limited to Abbotsbury, Lancashire, East Bromwich, and Faversham. In 1574, Azazel entered a pact with the English witch, Sarah Hugh, bequeathing her supernatural abilities. However, in 1617, on her deathbed, Sarah renounced her past deeds. Her body was confined in a coffin in an East Bromwich church and was being guarded by her human children, who were a nun and a priest. Their goal was to hold Sarah for 3 nights, as this would have ensured that Azazel did not have any hold on her any longer. During the first night, Azazel incinerated Sarah's children before abducting her and claiming that she carried his child, referring to him as a son, my favorite son. He then carried Sarah Hughes away to hell. Tragically, Sarah Hughes died while giving birth to the child, who would later become known as Hellboy. Immediately after the birth, the fallen demon severed the child's right hand and replaced it with what he called the right hand of doom, an external appendage that has served Hellboy in more ways than one. Hellboy's existence as a half-human and half-demon angered the ruling elite of Hell, but what infuriated them further was the treatment of his own child. They dispatched avenging angels to Azazel's palace, but they arrived too late. Azazel's newborn son had already been sent elsewhere, and Azazel himself was stripped of his title and imprisoned in ice. Fast forward to 1994, and Hellboy revisited East Bromwich, where he had a vision of the events of 1617, with Azazel eyeing him directly while claiming Sarah Hughes. It was then that Hellboy learned the truth about Azazel being his father. Sarah Hughes, the mother. Sarah Hughes hails from a lineage of witches that stretches back to Catherine of Gilfach. She was the daughter of the witch Catherine and Mordred, who was King Arthur's less than legitimate offspring with Morgan Le Fay. This line was all about daughters with magical powers and witchcraft. Sarah herself had 3 kids. One turned priest, one became a nun, and then there's the third, a half-demon chap we know as Hellboy. Hellboy's conception was quite the event on Walpurgis Night in 1574. Now, Sarah was only 16 back then, and she tied the knot with Azazel, Hellboy's demon dad. However, she did not deliver the child until much later. Fast forward to 1617. On her deathbed, Sarah had a change of heart about her wicked deeds and decided to make things right in front of her 2 human children. She repented her sins and asked them to chain her in the coffin, as I mentioned earlier. They were tasked with keeping her away from her hubby for 3 nights. A bit of cosmic divorce, you might say. Come the evening of October 6th, Azazel made his entrance, and it didn't end well for Sarah's human offspring. He whisked her away to hell, where she met a fiery end, but not before giving birth to Hellboy. In fact, he was born from this very fire. You can compare it with the dragons of Daenerys, who were born from the fire that burned her husband and that evil witch. In fact, this practically made Hellboy King Arthur's first male heir after his illegitimate son Mordred, whose mother was Arthur's half-sister. Arthur Pendragon, ancestor deceased. I think I have mentioned enough times that Arthur and Hellboy are related, but there's more to the Arthurian legend territory in the Hellboy universe. King Arthur, the big guy in the Hellboy tales, was all about that legendary sword Excalibur. The sword had its own thing going on. You see, after Arthur, it went into hibernation for a few centuries. Then it reappeared and was pulled from a stone by none other than Arthur's descendant, our man Hellboy, who was also the rightful king of Britain. Hellboy got his mitts on Excalibur for a bit. He decided to use it to take down Nimwe's champion, in case you're keeping score. And yeah, speaking of Nimue, she's often linked to the Lady of the Lake, who was the one that hooked King Arthur up with Excalibur in the first place. Now the comics don't spell it out, but it's a solid bet that Nimue played a part in that, considering she's all about giving Excalibur to Hellboy as part of her grand scheme in the here and now. Nimue, sometimes known as Vivian, had her moments in the classic Arthurian tales, especially in Sir Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur. She even took care of Sir Lancelot as a kid in some versions, but her biggest pre-Hellboy move was locking the wizard Merlin underground, despite the fact that he loved her and taught her stuff about magic. Asteroth, the uncle. Asteroth, the brother of Hellboy's father Azael, had his eyes on Hellboy, but not in the babysitting sense. He saw potential in that right hand of doom, the one Azael swapped for Hellboy's baby hand, and he figured it could be a game changer if Hellboy could be persuaded to claim it. In 1947, Asteroth found out that Hellboy was getting all cozy with the mortal world, especially thanks to his love for pancakes. Asteroth was not happy about it, but he still had hopes of winning Hellboy over to his demonic heritage. Fast forward a year, and Asteroth got word that his niece Gamori was trying to pull a fast one on Hellboy, leading him out of BPRD headquarters with the Midnight Circus, with plans to off the young lad. Asteroth swooped in, putting the kibosh on Gamori's plot, and warned her to lay off Hellboy as long as he was still kicking. Now, the first time Hellboy and Asteroth properly crossed paths was during a BPRD mission in Scotland. There was some sorcerer named Igor Bromhead who invoked hellish powers to shield himself from Hellboy's anger. Asteroth showed up and did his thing, but when Bromhead goofed and broke his protective talisman, Asteroth turned the guy's lower half into a lizard. Hellboy eventually dealt with a demon named Ualak, and Asteroth was kind enough to seal him back in his demon jail. Oh, and he told Hellboy to hang on to the crown of the apocalypse until he was ready for it. Jump to 2010, and Asteroth saw an opportunity during the Fairy Rebellion led by the Gruagach. He offered a hand in resurrecting the Queen of Blood, Nimue. Yes, the same one setting things in motion that would lead to Hellboy's eventual demise. During the rebellion, Asteroth gave Hellboy a reality check about Nimue's army and pushed him to embrace his demonic roots and raise a hellish army. But Hellboy gave him the cold shoulder, and a disappointed Asteroth left him to his own devices. Gamori, the half-sister. Gamori, the rather vengeful sister of Hellboy, had some dark designs back in 1948. She cooked up a lot to snuff out her younger brother, convinced he'd bring ruin not to just her, but also to their uncle Asteroth. But after her little murder attempt went belly up, Asteroth laid down the law. Gamori was to stay away from Hellboy and any more sinister schemes as long as Asteroth had a pulse. Things took a nasty turn for Gamori's family when Hellboy came to Hell. Her brothers Lusk and Ganon met their ends, and Gamori didn't take it well. She pointed the finger at Hellboy for their deaths and sent the Araneas, those mythical enforcers of justice, to dish out some punishment. However, the Araneas turned the tables, deciding Hellboy was innocent and putting Gamori on trial for lying to them. Once they were done with her, the Araneas let Hellboy in on a little secret. They revealed that when Gamori got out, she'd be on a Blood River quest straight to Pandemonium, and there she'd find the source of that Crimson River, the lifeless body of Satan. Witnessing the fallen Lord of Hell drove Gamori into madness. Her screams brought Pandemonium to ruins, and that's how you erase the heart of Hell. In another story arc titled Koshai the Deathless, Gamori reappeared in a flashback, looking a bit worse for wear as she ventured through Hell's desert in search of that Blood River. It was the confirmation of the Araneas prediction that they'd told Hellboy back in the day. Ganon, half-brother deceased. Ganon, one of Hellboy's older brothers, was in the same family tree, son of the demon Azael and nephew to Asteroth. Things got messy when Asteroth hoodwinked Ganon and his brother Lusk into taking on Hellboy for the right hand of doom. Ganon made a move to snatch the right hand of doom from Hellboy, going all out with an attack that left our red-skinned hero wounded. But then, Ganon made a colossal mistake, which turned out to be his last one. Ganon insulted his own dad and Asteroth's brother right in front of Asteroth. The demon did not take kindly to his brother's insults. The uncle wasted no time in decapitating his nephew. Oddly enough, even with his head separated from the body, Ganon could still chat. But if you think about it, it's not entirely that odd. As the story goes on, Ganon, Lusk, and Asteroth all ended up in the belly of Leviathan, and it's safe to say they probably didn't make it out. So that's the end of that family drama. Lusk, half-brother deceased. Lusk was one of Hellboy's not-so-friendly brothers. In fact, he was a bit on the scheming and envious side, but that's probably natural if your brother is so badass and powerful and leads the party on Earth and is loved by humans. He and his brother Ganon got roped into a tussle with Hellboy, all thanks to their sneaky uncle, Asteroth, and that coveted right hand of doom. But things went south when Asteroth gave Ganon a beating for talking smack about their old man. That's when Lusk had an aha moment and clued into his uncle's duplicitous nature and, let's say, less than friendly intentions. Lusk had a little chat with Asteroth, maybe not the friendliest one, and just when things got heated, Leviathan decided to join the party. It didn't end well for any of them, they all got gobbled up. So that's how Lusk's story came to a rather grim conclusion. No one likes to be eaten alive. Trevor Bruton Holm, adoptive father. Trevor Bruton Holm, born in 1916 in England, was quite the academic. He got himself a degree from Oxford University back in '43 and was no stranger to supernatural shenanigans. In fact, he was part of the British Paranormal Society. Now, things got real interesting in 1944 when he teamed up with Lady Cynthia Eden-Jones. Her spirit guides revealed information about some big trouble brewing at an old church in East Bromwich. Bruton Holm didn't waste time and tipped off the War Department. Soon, a squad of U.S. troops led by Sergeant George Whitman joined the fray. They all rolled up at the church on December 21, 1944, 2 days before the big prediction Lady Cynthia's guide had made. At the same time, on the not-so-nice department, the Russian mystic Grigory Rasputin and his Nazi occult friends were cooking up something called Project Ragnarok. Then came December 23rd, and right when Rasputin was summoning the Ogdru Jihad, a weird little demon-like child popped up in front of Bruton Holm's crew. Not just any demon, that little guy would later be known as Hellboy. In the 2004 Hellboy film, Bruton Holm went all out, tagging along with American commandos trying to stop Rasputin's big plan. He did catch a bullet in the leg from Karl Ruprecht Kroenen, leaving him with a lifelong limp. But Bruton Holm didn't back down. He lobbed a grenade at a portal machine and nearly blew Kroenen to bits. Then comes the touching part. Baby Hellboy appears and Bruton Holm steps up as a foster dad. In the movie, they make it clear it's a father-son deal, with Hellboy always calling him father. But as life would have it, Bruton Holm gets diagnosed with cancer. He picks a new guy, John Myers, to be Hellboy's new point person and gets caught up in a plot to drag Hellboy into some Rasputin chaos. Rasputin throws shade, saying Hellboy could bring on the apocalypse. But Bruton Holm doesn't flinch. The good old rosary that belonged to Bruton Holm comes back into play when Hellboy's about to do something wild. Myers tosses it to him, and it's like a dad's reminder to choose the right path. In Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, Bruton Holm reappears again, this time in a 1955 flashback. He keeps a young Hellboy under wraps at a U.S. Air Force base in New Mexico. On Christmas Eve, he reads his son a story about the Golden Army. In the present day, Hellboy still got his father's rosary beads as a reminder of the man who raised him. Simon Bruton Holm, adoptive great-uncle. Simon Bruton Holm was the uncle of Trevor Bruton Holm, making him the adoptive great-uncle of Hellboy. You can say he's one of the lesser-known relatives of Hellboy, much like his human siblings about whom I spoke while exploring Hellboy's mom, Sarah Hughes. Simon is a member of the British Paranormal Society and the Silver Lantern Club. Elizabeth Liz Sherman. Differentiate between comic and movie. Liz Sherman, a Kansas City native born on April 15, 1962, had an ordinary childhood until her pyrokinetic talents started flaring up at the ripe age of 10. Growing up in a Catholic family, she believed those fiery outbursts were her punishment for some sins she'd committed. Liz did her best to keep a lid on the flames, using a combination of prayer and sheer determination. Her parents occasionally caught wind of these fiery episodes, but they weren't quite sure how to handle it, or maybe even didn't believe it was pyrokinesis. Things took a dark turn in July 1973. Liz thought her fiery issues had vanished, but at a neighborhood fight, a kid yanked on her ponytails and it was like a match to gasoline. The result? A blazing inferno that wiped out an entire city block, including her family and their home. Quite obviously, Liz emerged unscathed from the ashes amid the 32 lives lost. BPRD got involved, but her extended family initially blocked the idea that Liz was behind it all. However, when random fires began popping up around her, they couldn't deny the truth. Her extended family, understandably freaked out by her explosive powers, passed the custody baton to the Bureau in May 1974. Liz got her own room in the BPRD headquarters, decked out to withstand flames. It was a lonely existence with only doctors and scientists in their bulky fire-resistant suits allowed in. Depression started to set in as she withdrew further, convinced she was a danger to everyone. It was now that Hellboy ventured into her flame-proof space bearing a lollipop to break the ice. He soon became her best buddy and something of an older brother figure. Hellboy helped her break out of her shell and get used to life at BPRD. They were thick as thieves for 6 years, even though Hellboy had his share of globe-trotting missions. But he always checked in on Liz, who was slowly getting the hang of controlling her fiery talents. In the films, she winds up in an asylum before Rasputin messes with her and ends up kidnapping her. But no worries, Hellboy's got her back. In the sequel, Liz and Hellboy's relationship hits some bumps, mainly due to her powers and his, let's say, rough around the edges manners. There's a twist too. Abe figures out she's pregnant. Then they go on an adventure, and the Angel of Death drops a bomb warning Liz that if Hellboy lives, he's gonna spell bad news for humanity. She goes on to tell Hellboy he's going to be a father. After dealing with Prince Nuada, Liz puts an end to the Crown controlling the Golden Army. She, Hellboy, Abe, and Johann Kraus decide to quit the BPRD. On top of that, Liz drops the news that she's expecting twins. So these were the top 10 most important family members to Hellboy. As a special mention, I would like to include his wife, Ostasia. I like how his family dynamics are, but I am not a fan of him being related to King Arthur and all that, but that's just me. Let me know what you think about it. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.